It's one.
Could you activate the chat box? It's deactivated right now.
I can hear you, Dick, but I cannot hear the proposal.
Thank you, Advisor Rader. We do hear you, and we will put that. We will activate that chat box.
Thank you.
the home surveillance. We are on a 10-minute recess, which will end at 1:40. At that time, I'll reconvene. Thank you. Meeting is to discuss the proposed budget for 2023, version number 3. And if anybody from the media here, raise your hand. I don't see anybody. And for the, I'd like to move, the agenda is in front of you. I'd like to see a hand to approve the agenda as written. And remember, this is the sole purpose of this meeting, not to discuss anything else. So I have a move to approve the agenda. Moved by Director Ross and approved by Director Casey. Thank you. And Chair's remarks make it brief. We're facing some headwinds here, and we're going to try as a board to get through this and then in a way that's acceptable to the residents. So that's all my remarks, and now it's time for an open forum. And so who's going to take the questions? Do we have any questions from the open forum?
We do, but it looks like Manuel Armendariz.
I'm gonna make my comments when we get to that section in the budget
Okay.
process, okay? It'll be reserved. Thank you.
So we have no comments in the open forum, so we have no responses. Move on to item number 8, review the proposed 2023 budget plan version 3. Staff going to take that?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. President, for giving us the opportunity today to take another look here at the budget. We're going to be taking a look at the 2023 business plan, United's version of it, to see what we're going to put in the business plan for next year. And as we meet together, I will just remind everyone that in all, there are 22 officially scheduled meetings to review the budget. I'm glad to say that we're rounding the end here. It's going to be this week's worth of meetings, and then we will have something for you to look at your regularly scheduled board meetings. So I'm happy to say that we're at the end, but I just wanted to put this slide up here to remind not only you, but those at home, that we have been working on these budgets and looking at them since starting back in March, and ultimately they're going to be presented at your board meetings in September for ultimate approval. And you can see all the different meetings that we've had there. But I did want to walk you through the process as far as how we got to this point. And like I said, we started back in March, and back in March we came before you. We had each of the department heads come forth and give you an idea of what our service levels are. I wanted to reach out to you to see if there's any input, any changes that you wanted to see. At that point, we had each of our department heads input their individual line-by-line items into the budget, and they came out to figure out how much funding was going to be needed to meet those service levels. And at that point, what ended up happening is we brought all that information and put it before our CEO for review. And she dutifully sharpened her pencil and went and really asked for the directors to come back and to take a really close look and see what can be trimmed, what can we do as a staff to bring this as low as possible to still provide those same service levels for you. And I am happy to say that there were quite a bit of reductions that were done. At that point, the CEO instructed each of the department heads to go back and relook at their budgets, and they did, and we brought them back forth together, and we compiled them all, and we wanted to make sure that United was going to get their portion and everyone else was going to get their portion. And at that point, the CEO sat down with each of the department heads and conducted a departmental review where they got to justify line item by line item what was inside that budget. And similarly, at the conclusion of that, that's when we brought it forth for the first time before the board and got the board's input. And we'll be showing you what that has looked like as we've gone through these different iterations of the budget. But I will also say that at the conclusion of each of the versions of the budget that we've presented to the board has provided additional input and, of course, strategic direction as far as what to do. So this is all to say that this is your staff and your boards have been very dutifully looking at these budgets to see what can be done to help out with those. But regardless of that, there's still a couple of assumptions and a couple of items that have been outside of our control as we're taking a look at what's going on. For example, utilities. Utilities is a big point of assumptions that we had to take a look at because there's been a lot of rate increases, as you've been hearing, of course, in the news and those kinds of things. And so we have taken some strides to help mitigate some of those increases. For example, in electricity, the rates themselves have increased by double digits, by over 20%. However, we were taking a look at some history and seeing that as a whole, we're trending less and less usage. So we were able to mitigate some of those expenses. And of course, trash. Trash has been a big concern and a big topic of conversation as we have transitioned to a new service provider that not only are they providing a new level of service, but they have to comply with the different recycling obligations and laws that have taken place. All that being said, the trash factor has increased substantially by about 53% by a combination of all those things. So the question is, what do we do, or what kind of assumptions can we make to help mitigate those? And I'm happy to say that we have been able to find certain offsets there. We were very fortunate that El Toro Water District has met together and they came out with a new rate schedule. And even though they did increase the rates of water themselves, the rates of sewer for domestic use has decreased dramatically. So United was able to get a benefit of over $400,000 there with that rate reduction. So we were very excited to see that. But again, we'll take a look at these in context as we go through. I just want to make you aware that each of these items we've been really taking a close look at and see what we can do to help out the per man per month assessment. Fuel was another one where you feel the pain of the pump as much as I do. We have budgeted a 15% fuel rate increase. However, that's been offset by staff is doing a lot of the things that we can to help mitigate some of those costs. For example, we're taking a look at hybrid vehicles. Anytime we replace any hybrid vehicles, in addition to that, all the handheld landscaping, for example, blowers and edgers and those kinds of things, we anticipate replacing half of those in 2023 with an electric option. So you'll be seeing some fuel consumption savings there. Additionally, there's some things that aren't necessarily United. They are GRF, for example, TV programming costs that have been pretty impactful. But we did cover those in GRF. I just want to let you know that there have been some external forces that have really had an impact on your assessments. And insurance has, as you've seen also in the news, there's been a lot of adverse things going on, not only in California, but throughout the country that have had an upward trend on our insurance market. So we did see some increases there at about 10%, 12% actually for insurance there. I also want to talk about the labor market. We're having a hard time hiring and keeping good staff. And that's not only unique to us, but it's something that prevails thereabouts in all the market. And so what are we going to do for that? And you'll see some of the assumptions that we've made that are actually going to help reduce your potential increases there in the future. And lastly, and certainly not least, is going to be inflation. We had inflation numbers come out this morning, and the newest inflation numbers that we see are 8.5%. So obviously a lot that is going on here that's going to affect your budget. But let's talk a little bit more about the wages and the difficult market that we're in right now. I want to share with you our 2023 wage increase assumption. We do have planned wage adjustments next year. We have two categories of employees. We have non-union and union. And the union contract or the union employees are part of a collective bargaining agreement, and their agreement goes through almost the end of 2023, through November of 2023. So that's stipulated in the contract, and it is what you see there on your screen at 2%. However, for non-union, the question was, what kind of assumption should we make? So we did make a 5% assumption on that, and let me show you how we came to that. If we can have the next slide real quick. One more slide. Sorry. And the way that we came up with that is we have conducted a salary comparison. We have contracted with a company whose specialty it is to go through different firms and figure out what the prevailing wage is, or what the market rate is. And we've conducted a salary study, and we've compared ourselves. What's great about this is we were able to be very specific in our comparison. For example, we chose the industry of not-for-profit. So we compared our wages against others that are also not-for-profit. We were able to specify the location, so we were able to specify, of course, Orange County, and we were able to specify the size of the company with those companies that we compared ourselves being at least 500 employees. And we reviewed all full-time non-union positions, excluding our executive team. And here is the interesting findings that we saw. We saw that in all, 69%, those first two categories of your employees are not making what the market rate. So the majority of the employees are not at market rate. And we did find that some of those are well under market, being 28% of those. So the question we were left to ask ourselves is, well, what do we do at this point? And so we went back and took a look back and saw what the budgeted wage increases were and compared that to CPI. And so the darker line there, the green line, are the budgeted wage increases, and the orange line is in a comparison to a CPI. And I bring this up to show you that every time that green line, the wage increases, is over the CPI number, that means that your employees' dollars are going further. They're able to have more purchasing power. They're able to buy more. But anytime that orange line is over that green line, then your employees' purchasing power is actually decreasing. So we're left to ask ourselves, well, what should we do? Would it be right to do an 8% increase, a 9% increase to keep up with inflation? What should we do? So ultimately, we decided, or we recommend that we put in a 5% increase for non-union employees to at least start staving off some of that inflationary pressures there. So that's how we came up with that increase. But let me get back to the reason that we're all here today is to talk about the United Basic Assessment. So here you see a 5-year history of United's basic assessment, and this, of course, is the assessment that all members of United pay. I will guide your eye there to those last few years. For the last 3 years, there have been no increases. For 2023, despite larger inflation here, we do recommend a $26.53 increase, which is a 6.7% increase. Again, if you take a look at it and take a step back and realize that that hasn't changed in 3 years, it seems pretty reasonable from a big overview perspective. And when we combine that, because members of United aren't only members of United, but they also have interest in GRF. GRF just took a look at their budget on Monday, and they have a budgeted increase for 2023 of $3.81. So when you combine the two, the grand total increase for a basic assessment for members in United is $30.34, or 4.9%. So there again, happy to report that it is under that inflationary figure. Taking a look at some full-time staffing equivalents here, we do have them listed for the last 10 years. 10 years ago, we had full-time equivalents of 761 versus what we're recommending for 2023 of 736. This is a little skewed, I will say, because there are some positions that have been outsourced. So meaning even though they're not necessarily on your payroll, you're still paying for for example, lifeguards. Lifeguards aren't employed by VMS per se, but we use that as an outside service to have lifeguards on duty, so you still have the dollars in there. So really what I wanted to focus on here is a change from 2022 to 2023. And this, of course, is community-wide. And community-wide, we have an increase of 1.78 staff years, and that has to do with customer service representatives, or 2 customer service representatives that are already on staff that were approved for this year, and specifically they're being used to help answer phone calls and to provide as much service to residents as possible. And with their addition, we have seen some increased statistics. So when we're taking a look at call rates, we're able to see a lower abandon rate, also lower hold times, and increased answer rates. So all those efforts are being well received in that we're able to provide a better experience for our residents there. So again, just a big graph to show you that essentially there's no change. The only change that we did was directly front-facing with customer interaction. But here's, earlier I talked a little bit about full-time equivalents and what we're doing or what has been done. And I will say that for the first time in a long time, we're using a vacancy factor, for lack of a better word. What the 2023 business plan includes, it includes authorized positions of 735.97. So 736 authorized positions. However, of those positions, we only plan on funding. In other words, we're only going to assess for 711 of them. And the difference is going to be that vacancy factor. So we believe that as people move on or there's some transitions, that it either A, takes us a little while to find the qualified candidates, or we purposely keep them open to be able to achieve these savings. But the key there is that you should still be able to benefit the same service levels that you're experiencing and not have to fund as many positions. And we're still in the process of fully recovering from COVID. So we don't know of those positions how many we're going to need going forward. We will say that in 2023, we're going to take a closer look and see how many we're going to end up authorizing altogether, how we're going to move forward in the future. But for right now, we're going to fund 711 of those positions, as you see in front of you. I also wanted to provide some history. As I mentioned, when we've had several versions of the budget, we've had 3 official versions and countless things that we've done on spreadsheets behind the scenes here. But from the beginning, when we started presenting this, our original volley, despite the CEO reiterating and re-going over budgets with departments, it was originally at $663. We've had a couple of other revisions, and I'm happy to report that it now stands at $644. So you can see, as we've gone from version to version, you see decreases along the way. So that's been very encouraging. But again, what we're all here to see is on slide 13. What is the difference between the 2022 plan, meaning what am I paying today, versus what I will pay in the future? In 2023, the proposed budget is for $644.22, an increase of $30.34. So now I'd like to go over each of these particular lines and address them. So we'll start with revenue. In revenue here, you can see that altogether you have $1.8 million of revenue that we budget. And you can see that broken up on your screen, but I prefer charts, so I'll show you this chart. There are 4 major categories. As far as revenue is concerned, merchandise sales makes just a small part of that. I will talk about fees and charges for residents. This is our chargeable services, and you can see additional revenue here of $31,000 due to more anticipated chargeable services, particularly when it comes to moisture intrusion. We've been experiencing an uptick of moisture intrusion charges, and we see that as we make a determination as far as where those result from, if it's an alteration or something like that, then we charge it back to the residents. So we do anticipate revenue going up from this as we have more and more hearing determinations for that. Laundry stayed steady at $270,000, and this is, of course, your laundry machines that you have within the mutual. And so we see that that's remaining pretty steady, so we continue to budget there. Under this category of miscellaneous, you have additional revenue of $64,000, and that's primarily due to projected increase of lease processing fee revenue. And we've been noticing is that for the first half of the year, leasing volume has been up by 10% year over year, and revenue has been up by 25%. And we anticipate that this upward trajectory is going to continue. And so we felt confident about increasing your revenue assumption there by $64,000. So all in all, again, United receives $1.7, almost $1.8 million of revenue. It is an increase of about $100,000, $96,000 compared to last year. So we use that money to offset your assessments, of course. And I want to give you a brief overview here of your expenses. Here's a little pie chart to remind us all that ours is a service organization. So you can see that the majority of this is related to employee compensation, as that's how you get your service. A big chunk coming from utilities and insurance. So again, we'll take a look at this in a chart format. We've sorted this by area of magnitude. Again, employee compensation is your biggest, as you can see there. This increased by $314,000, and primarily this is due to the wage adjustments, which we described, but also an allocation adjustment that was made, particularly in compliance. They changed their allocation from 3% to United to actually 45%. What they've done is they've taken a look at where that work is done, and that has increased the United portion there. And the increase was also furthered by, of course, planned wage adjustments, higher medical insurance, and increase on taxes and benefits that are all related to employee compensation. Utilities and telephone, we started to describe earlier. The big increase here came from trash. That was $285,000. However, there were a lot of decreases that we were able to benefit from. So ultimately, utilities decreased by $176,000. The majority of that was from sewer. Again, El Toro Water District has met, and they just approved their rates that really affected the domestic sewer rate. So we were able to benefit from that. Altogether, utilities decreased $176,000 there. Insurance is the next largest category, coming in at $4.6 million. This is an increase of $113,000, and this is due to hazard and liability insurance. So they're going to be renewing their policies in October, and this is in anticipation of those renewal rates. Again, we've had some difficulty, not we, but the country in general has had some adverse weather effects and those kinds of things, and that has driven property insurance to continue to increase. And the other big increase here comes from outside services. In outside services, United experienced a $694,000 increase, and that's primarily due to four things. One is plumbing. We moved $300,000 for our general plumbing service to the operating fund. We had previously put this in our reserve expenditures fund, and when we took a look at what it actually was, it was really for maintenance and belonged in operating. So even though the dollar amount didn't change in your budget, it is an operating expense now, so it does get put on your assessments here. Damage restoration also increased $191,000 due to moisture intrusion events. And again, we're just trying to reflect some of the actuals that we've been experiencing. There has been an uptick in damage restoration. The other change here was for building maintenance. We anticipate that there are going to be more buildings fumigated in 2023 than there were in 2022. And there is a small increase in here for additional funds for gutter cleaning. In the 2022 budget, we had the 2- and 3-story buildings included in your budget for your gutter cleaning. But in 2023, we've also added the 1-story buildings. So those are the big additions here. Some of the smaller categories here in expenditures are going to be net allocations to mutuals, which increased by a relatively small $7,000 due to the net result of interdepartmental allocations. And materials and supplies has increased by $64,000 due to the rising material costs, particularly in plumbing services. Plumbing and building, as you've seen, everything has gone up, so some of your materials costs have gone up. The last category here is all other operating, which shows a decrease, and that's primarily due to legal fees. We've seen a downtick in legal fees as we're trying to be very judicious as far as what we put before our lawyers to opine on, so you see a decrease there. That concludes the expense portion. The next portion of your business plan is fund contributions, and as you can see here, there's a 5-year history of what we've been contributing to your reserve funds. You'll see that in let's go to the next slide. It shows it. Nope. In 2020, we saw a contribution of $152 per man per month, or $11.5 million, and you see that actually decrease for 21 and 22. So we saw a decrease in the contribution to the reserve fund. And the reserve fund is, there's a lot of need for it. There's a lot of aging infrastructure and those kinds of things that we're planning on doing. So we thought it was going to be appropriate to increase that back up to $11.8 million. What we've done is we've implemented the expertise of a reserve specialist. And the reserve specialist has gone through and taken a look and walked your site and took a look at those buildings and those structures for which you have responsibility, and has made a recommendation that would be our contribution to make sure that we're able to maintain these buildings and these items. Here is their summary of where we stand currently. And I'll sum it up for you. One of the ways that this is measured is in a percent funded. Currently, United is funded at 41.8% funded, and you can see the little chart there on the bottom of your screen. The way that they measure this is what kind of risk are you at for a special assessment? And again, you're at 41.8%, so they consider that a medium risk. I will say that they use the same chart for HOAs of all sizes. So when you consider that ours is gigantic, and when you consider that we have $16.3 million as a fund balance, it's actually pretty good. The reserve specialist was happy and pleased with this. However, just want to make sure that we're going to continue to be trending in the right direction. So what they do here is they give us two alternatives. They say, hey, here's what we recommend that you fund your reserves at. And their recommendation is, in the middle of your screen, they're $14.168 million. That's what they recommend to start moving us towards those higher percentages. They say also, however, there is an alternate minimum contribution. If you just want to make sure that you're going to be covered and not worry about getting to that full 100%, we think $11.8 million is fair. So that is what is in the plan, that alternate minimum contribution. Here's what it looks like on a 30-year basis. This is the plan here. Along the left-hand side, you see the years for the next 30 years. In the middle of your screen there, you see the percent funded, including that yellow and that red, just to show you where you're at. This is the funding source that we are including in our recommendation here today. I will make you aware that there is another, the recommended funding is quite substantially higher than that, and that's on your next screen here. This is not the one that we're going with. This is the one that's recommended by the reserve specialist, but in order to do that, to give you an idea, the reserve funding would be $14.1 million. And what that means, it would mean an additional $30 per man or per month. So again, not what we're doing. I just wanted to present that to you and show you that is an alternative as far as what can be done. But here it is in dollars and cents, so that makes it a little bit clearer here. Again, this is with the first option. And here we're providing some history. What have the assessments been? What have our expenditures been? What has been our ending balance? And then, of course, beginning in 2023 and beyond are some of our projections. What I want to draw your eye here to is, in my opinion, the most important part is that last column, that ending balance. And starting in 2017 through today, you can see that each and every year, your ending balance has been decreasing. So I know that some out there will say, hey, we're not spending all of our money, we're running favorable variances, and I'll agree with you, but I will also point out and say your ending balance is decreasing each and every year, with the exception of 2020, which of course was COVID, and we stopped a lot of projects and those kinds of things, but absent COVID, each and every year your funds have been decreasing. So again, it is time to ramp up those contributions, and that is the reason that we're recommending that $156.23 contribution for this fund. Additionally, there are a couple other funds. The reserve fund is a required fund. That's one that you have to have per Davis Sterling. But we do have a couple other funds that aren't required, and that specifically is the Contingency Fund. This is a nice-to-have fund. Last year, we didn't make any, meaning in 2022, we didn't make any contributions to this fund. We do recommend $1 for 2023, and we'll show you what that looks like here on this next slide. In the contingency fund, you currently have about $1.3 million. In this particular year, you can see your expenditure includes an operating deficit that is going before the board to include the 2021 operating deficit. It'll be funded here out of this contingency fund. In the current year, in 2022, you're running a surplus of about $518,000. $443,000 is your surplus there. And so you can see that contribution. Additionally, we're recommending that you put in $1 per man per month. So altogether, your assessment contribution will be $518,000. We don't have any defined usage for this fund, but again, it is nice to have. And historically, we've used it for things such as solar or fire restoration or insurances or fumigation programs. There's always an endless need, right? We can always find a use for extra money, but it is nice to have something in your back pocket. So to that end, we do recommend that you increase this to $1 contribution. And lastly, just to make you aware, we also have a property tax fund. Throughout the year, the United Board has voted to establish a fund exclusively for property taxes. And so here it is. We will be collecting exactly what we're going to be paying out to the county assessor's office. So we don't see any ending balance per se that's budgeted. So you can see that it's going to increase yearly based on property taxes as we go through that. So again, that was the total. Again, I'll end here with this slide, reminding us all that for United, the proposed business plan for 2023 is the United portion alone is $26.53, combined with the GRF increase of $3.81. The grand total is $30.34, or about 5% there. And that will conclude our presentation today.
Thank you, Jose. And now we're going to go to the question series, but let me set the ground rules here. 3 minutes for people, and I'm going to start with people here, and then we'll go to Zoom. And after that's concluded, then we'll take a round with the directors here. So it's 3 minutes for each, okay? All right, so who do we have first?
Manuel Armendariz.
Mr. Armendariz, please, you have the floor.
I'd like to pass out, this is the page, and the backside has a few comments, just so that you could follow my remarks, because I'm going to cover a lot of important numbers here.
Start it. She's ready. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Manuel Armendariz, Unit 917D. First, I'd like to have you turn, and maybe you can show it on the screen, page 5 of attachment 1 that shows the business plan by account. And I'm going to speak specifically about line 26, reserve fund contribution of $11.8 million. Can you show that on the screen?
Page 5.
The one, business plan. Summary by account.
Which one?
Summary by
It's
account.
in the agenda.
It's in the agenda. Okay.
So, Mr. Armendariz, what we have is the slide deck that Jose had just gone over. We don't necessarily have that available, so the best that
Well,
we
you
can
do.
probably
Yeah, I
do.
saw it earlier.
It's included. That was the notice file that was
Okay.
distributed last week.
I like it.
All right.
If you can point us in terms of what you're looking to discuss.
In your agenda packet, it's on page 5, okay? You have it available in print. And I just want to point out that of the increased contributions, that line item is $14.21. It's a 10% increase over the prior year, and it's the largest single item increase of any of the categories, okay? Second thing I want to point out is that I think this is unjustified and has no support, because the only comment you have is that it was recommended by the consultant. And when I first brought this up at last month's meeting, I pointed out that the expenditures he was using to come up with this were overstated over what the actual budget was. And they were overstated by $3.2 million. So in this report that you're giving to us now, you have corrected that. And you reduced the expenditures from $16.8 million down to $13.6 million. But you left the assessment the higher amount. Okay? And I found this out in his reports before, that his projection of expenses are always much higher than what you actually budget. Okay? In addition to that, in prior years, reserves have been building up because you've had surpluses accumulated. I know that for 2017, 18, and part of 2019, because I did those analysis when I was a director. And that added about between $4 to $6 million to your reserves. So your reserves right now are the strongest they've ever been at 19 point something million dollars. So, you know, you conveniently left the revenue with a higher assessment amount, but adjusted the expenses. And now you're showing that the reserve balance will be 14 point something million instead of only $11 million. Well, I disagree with that. And I think that when VMS was doing the reserve studies, they were much more reliable and much more accurate because you actually did a 30-year analysis for every component of reserve, whether it was hot water heaters or whether it's countertops, whatever. You actually listed out what you expect to do every single year in the future, and you are on a 30-year pay plan. The consultant doesn't do that. Matter of fact, he doesn't have very much in there for one of your biggest items, waste lines. So there's a lot of things that I can question about the reserve study. And I think it's important to point out that a lot of his projections aren't reliable. For example, in the 2019 report, you can go back and check this out. He had projected that the December 31st, 2021 reserve balance would be $15.5 million. In his 2020 report, he had projected it to be $15.4 million. And in his 2021 report, his more recent one, that was last year, he projected it was to be $14.4 million. And yet, according to the audit financial
Thank you,
statements,
Mr. Armendariz.
it was
Time is up.
$19 million.
Your time is up. Thank
Okay,
you,
this
Mr.
increase
Armendariz.
has to
Thank
be-
you, Mr. Armendariz. Your time is up. Please
Okay, this has to be
leave the
eliminated.
podium.
This has to be eliminated.
Erica?
We have Dick Rader was first. It looks like no one else is coming.
Mr. Rader? You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you. I need a piece of information before I ask my question. When we started out with the budget process, what was the United HOA fee? You're at $26.53, but it was more than that.
I'm pulling it up. Yeah, 663.47 on slide
No,
number
no.
12.
I'm asking for the HOA fee. It was $30 something, maybe 32, maybe 33. Am I correct?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Yeah, it was 33, I think, something like that.
Okay. So what has happened is we've gone down something like $7. So my question is, it would be interesting to know what major items were cut from the budget and what impact they may have on services. And related to this, Manny just pointed out something which I picked up on slide 23, there were changes made. And I think it's helpful to point out when changes are made. Because the last time, you'll see that the expenditures are now 13 million something, when last time was 16 million something. So as a resident and also as an advisor to the Finance Committee, I think it's helpful to understand what changes were made, and as I said, what impact they will have on services. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Rader.
If I may address some of those, President?
Excuse me?
May I address some of those questions?
Sure. You've had it, Jose. Go ahead.
All right. First and foremost, thank you. As far as what was changed, we talked a lot about some of the assumptions that were changed. We included that vacancy factor, which was a really big deal. That was able to bring down the assessment from the original amounts. The assessment, I'm sorry, didn't just decrease $7. It actually decreased like $19 since the original time it was presented. So that is one of the changes that were made. Additionally, we were told about the sewer change, so that sewer change did decrease the budget quite substantially as well. I'm sorry, I said sewer, I meant water. From last version to this version, and my apologies, I didn't take the time to explain that, we did decrease $200,000 due to assumed we're going to use less water consumption due to state regulations and those kinds of things. So you saw a $200,000 benefit from the last version that we saw the budget to this one. So that's probably the $4 or $5 that Advisor Rader was talking about. And then as far as these changes here that you see on your screen, we made the reserve study match what was included by your departments as far as the programs report is concerned. So as we went through the programs reports, one of our many meetings that we looked at maintenance and construction to take a look and see what was recommended for the next year. And the original draft of the reserve study didn't have that included, so they do match now to make this a more useful tool for us. So that did decrease. But again, as far as some of the other comments that were made, the ending balance is increasing by $4 million, I think Director Armendariz said, or Mr. Armendariz said. Again, I point you to the rightmost column here, and you can see the ending balances, and you can see for yourself that, again, these are decreasing. The purpose of a reserve study isn't necessarily to tell you how much you're going to expend. The purpose of a reserve study is to make sure that you have funds available to cover those expenses for which you have responsibility. And that is going to be a key distinction. The reserve specialist takes a look at our roofs, for example, and for example, if they had a 20-year life and 2 years have gone by, then we need to make sure that we have 2/20ths or the appropriate amount of money available to us to replace those roofs should the need arise. And again, that is the purpose of the reserve study, is to indicate and make sure that we have the right amount of funds available to us. Again, the increase is justified here.
If I may, I still have time.
Wait, you don't have the floor. We're going to follow protocol here. You don't have the floor. Jose has just answered. Now, do you want the floor?
Yes, may I? Just one quick comment.
Go ahead. You have the floor.
Thank you. You know, when you look at this, you have to also pay very careful attention to the most right-hand column. And it shows that when you do funding, you should not only consider this year, you should look forward. And we have, I believe it's a $10,500 million line that we have said in the past that we don't want to cross. We're dangerously close to crossing that in 25, and we'll cross it in 26. So just a heads up that the projections for the amount that you'll be asking in subsequent years, they may have to go up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rader. Erica, do we have any more questions from the floor or from Zoom?
We have two more on Zoom. So second would be Andre Torn.
Well, he's a director. I'm thinking from the floor or from
No.
nobody else. All right, so I'm going to go around the table here. Start with the directors who are here. Director Lee.
I'm still trying to figure out what Mr. Armendariz says and try to see that the $14 increase on the reserve on my chart. So can you skip me? I'm going to still look and maybe you can come back to me. Okay? Can I?
Okay.
Yeah.
Director Cash Akrikar.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do have a few questions. On your slide number 4, you're putting some pressure on TV programming costs. Have they gone up significantly? From what to what?
Now, let's Jose, do you want to do this one at a time, or you want me to wait till the end? You want to deal with Director
I'll take the
Akrikar
question now.
Okay. Because I'm trying to keep time here, so I'll cut your time off and let him answer your question.
I'll write them down if you want to get all your questions out.
So what do we, I asked a question,
Ask your question.
as TV costs have gone up from what to what?
So if you can ask all your questions, and then Jose will address you with an answer.
Okay. Another thing, United, on chart number 8, United Basic Assessment is going up 8%.
Sorry, can you repeat that one?
From 396 to 422. Okay. My other question is chart number 10. You are showing a decrease in the employees to 736. Is that adequate staff or we are understaffed?
Yeah, adequate, but go ahead.
My next question is on chart number 15. You're showing a miscellaneous going from 623 to 687 or 64,000 increase. Can you give some more details on that for me? My next question, you are increasing on chart 17, the outside services are going up by 695,000, and the employee compensation related is also going up by 314,000. So we are looking at a total of $1 million plus increase from 22 to 23. But you're kind of splitting it to not quite reflect those costs. My next question is, I don't know if I'm right or wrong here. On chart number 19, I'd seen a figure 14 million for 2023, and now you're showing 11.8. Maybe I'm wrong there, but is there something I missed? And those are all my questions.
Thank you, Director Abercar. Jose?
Thank you.
All right, let's see if we can grab them all here. So starting back at programming costs. TV programming costs on slide 4, please, Erica. TV programming costs, maybe I shouldn't include it in your United. This is something that's GRF specific. I'm talking about cable networks, Fox Sports, CBS, all those kinds of people. What we do is we enter into a 3-year contract with them. And so the ones that have been set, but every year about a third of them come up for renewal. And those renewals are usually pretty significant. I just put that under a key assumption because it's very significant, very impactful for GRF. Again, not a United thing, but just to give you an idea of why we put it on there, because of those big programming, Discovery Channel, Disney, those kinds of people. Their contracts tend to increase quite substantially since they're once every 3 years.
Okay.
Moving on to, I think slide 8 was next. The total increase from 22 to 2023, and we're talking United only, is $26.53, or 6.7%. And slide 15. Slide 15 is revenue. I want to remind everyone of that. Miscellaneous revenue is anticipated to increase by $64,000, primarily due to projected increase of lease processing fee. So as we review every month, your number of leases in United is starting to creep up. It's not yet to your limits or anything like that, but as United has more leases, we do charge a lease processing fee. We anticipate that trend to continue into 2023, so that's going to generate about $64,000 more revenue for you. Slide 17. Slide 17, it talks about outside services. And this outside services, again, this is a pretty big line here in your expense category. This increased by $695,000 due to 4 reasons primarily. The first is going to be plumbing. $300,000 was moved from your reserve fund into your operating fund, and that is due to the nature of what we were doing with those. It ended up being that we were clearing out drains, doing a lot of maintenance work, not particularly reserve work. Since it's maintenance work, it's supposed to be paid out of the operating fund. So you see the increase here. Overall, it's net zero. We took 300 out of reserves and put 300 in operating. But what we're looking at here is your operating expenses. So that's 300 of it. Damage restoration accounts for 191,000 of it. And we're seeing an upward trend in damage related to floods and moisture intrusion and those kinds of things. So as your infrastructure is aging, we anticipate that continuing. There is an offset there because if we do find that it was caused by an alteration, then it is billed back to the resident. But all in all, that will cause this particular line to increase $191,000. And fumigation, we anticipate more buildings to be fumigated in next year, so that accounts for $79,000. And lastly, we talked about the gutter cleaning. The last year's budget included 2- and 3-story buildings. Next year's budget includes 1-, 2-, and 3-story buildings. That was an increase of $45,000. So that's that one. Now, and as far as labor is concerned, we talked about the wage changes and the change in allocations when we're talking about the compliance work center. So altogether, yes, that is $1 million related to all of the things that we just discussed. And I think lastly, on slide 19, I want to make this distinction because sometimes it's a little bit, it gets by people. What we're taking a look at is how much we're anticipating to collect as far as assessments are concerned. We anticipate to collect $11.8 million in assessments. The figure that you were probably looking at earlier is how much we intend to spend. We do intend to spend $13.6 million.
Recommended.
But as far as the collection end of it is 11.8.
Okay, I take it back. You're right.
Yeah, I think that's all of them.
Director Diane Casey?
Oh, I just had 2 questions.
Okay.
Where is the revenue? How do we get reimbursed for people charging their electric cars? Where does that revenue? Are they assessed for those charges?
Absolutely.
I pay every year.
You do?
It's under miscellaneous, but I can show you specific accounts. It is under the miscellaneous category of revenue. It is.
I mean, and is that from households that are using carports, or is that from, I mean, how are you assessing that? I mean, people are using electricity now instead of gas, right?
There are 2 different fees. There's a golf cart electric fee, so that lets people charge their electric golf carts, and there's also an electric vehicle plug-in fee. So those people that are registered with those types of vehicles also pay an additional fee. And both of those fees go directly to United, so they're not allocated or anything like that, and you're able to see.
But it's not a meter that's on a special charging station. It's just they're getting a fee just based on what they think usage is going to be, or they can monitor that plug-in in their carport?
It's a set fee for now.
Just a set fee? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. I'm just wondering if you were doing that.
Absolutely.
And then the other question is, and this is, I mean, we do a lot of manor alterations, that we pay for because people's appliances and their flooring and everything is aging out, But we're also doing it for people that are renting places, buying and renting places. I don't know. It just seems like big expense that we shouldn't bear. But I don't know. That's something to look forward in the future. I don't know. You know what I mean? Do you get what I mean?
I do. And that is a board policy that may be considered at a future time.
Yeah.
As far as reimbursement of appliances and those kinds of things, is that what
Yeah,
you're talking
I mean,
about?
somebody getting like up to $2,000, if we, did that a lot, or I mean, it could be even more than that. I mean, I've seen it signed off for more than that. So I would just say, if somebody's buying in here and then they're renovating to rent it, I mean, I don't think that's fair that we're paying for that. Anyway, I don't know how much it is, but I'd like to look into that in the future.
We'll make a note of that.
That's it. That's all the questions I have. Everything looks good.
Thank you, Director. Director Ross? No, no, save May. You're next. I'll direct the meeting, okay? You're on.
My questions relate to full-time equivalence, chart number 11. And only this chart.
Would you use your microphone, please, so they can hear you on Zoom?
Yeah. My questions relate to full-time equivalence. I'll get it right. Okay. Full-time equivalence, which is chart number 11. And the employee compensation of 11.7 million, is that just United employee compensation, or is that all of us to combined? The 11,709,000 that we pay for employees.
That is United's portion.
That's United, okay. And the head count that's used in the full-time equivalence is 711. That's funded, and yet it shows 735 that's authorized. So of the 11.7 million, how is that based on 711 employees?
It is based on United's portion of 711, yes.
Okay. Is there a plan to add 24 more employees?
The plan is to have them authorized, meaning that gives us an authorization to hire them. However, we will manage to that to make sure that we don't go over budget.
So,
Because it takes a little bit of time to recruit and find, and there's always that turnover time that is empty. And that's what we're trying to account for here.
so the budget is 711.
Correct.
Okay. Because if you added 24 more employees, that would be the equivalent of $23 per manor at $1.8 million. And that's why it's so important for us to know whether 711 is really the lock-in number that we're using to represent our budgeted compensation of 11.7 million.
That is correct. We will not exceed that amount.
Okay. And the 74 employees that are still yet to fill, is that part of the 711?
Any vacant positions we have, we are trying to fill. Again, with this labor market, we're having incredible difficulty filling positions. So we are confident that we will not exceed the 711 in any manner next year.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Ross. Director Lee, are you ready?
Well, by going over these, on the assessment history, we are right with the inflation percentage. If the inflation is 6.7%, we had gone up by that much. So our assessment has not gone up any more unreasonable rate than the inflation rate, as I see it.
Correct. In fact, the inflation that was published this morning was 8.5.
That's right, so we're below. However, our revenue is very, we can pretty much forecast what our revenue is going to be, and we have a control over it somewhat. However, the expense, and there are areas we just have no control over, like a utility rate or the CR&R, trash and all that. So because of that, the expenses keep going up a lot faster than our revenue. So we face this negative deficit every year, and that's eating up our reserve, isn't it?
Yes.
So as danger, I mean, when I look at these, the reserve funding plan, you know, in 2000, well, is it Mr. Rader said that we shouldn't go below the 15, was it 10 million? So according to this chart, in 2000, is it 2026 that our balance would be like under 10 million? Is it?
Yes, that's the current projection.
Which is very scary. And at the same time, we're not seeing a great returns on our balance on the reserve funds. So we're getting hurt on both ways. We are not getting good return at the same time our cost is going up. So I think we have to come up with some plans to increase our revenue. And I don't know what their options are. As one of the options, as Director Casey mentioned, was the electric cars, the charge stations or whatever. But I think we should seriously, because we cannot keep pounding and argue about whether we're going to raise $20 or $30 is too much for the residents. But we have this deficit that is coming every year, and it's going to get bigger and bigger and we cannot catch up just by keep raising the assessment, and at some point we will have residents that cannot afford to pay that fast rate of raise in the assessment. So I feel that we should all put our heads together and really try to explore the area to raise the revenue other than just solely depending on what our revenue sources are at the present time. And I don't know what the answer is, because it is going to be a tough question, and it's happening pretty fast. You know, looking at the balance of the reserve funds, really, it's scary, don't you think?
Absolutely.
So it's not a question, but I'm just stating my very serious concerns, and I think we're headed for some very serious decisions, you know, we need to make.
Thank you, Director Lee. I'm going to go to the directors that are on Zoom. We'll start with Director Ascari.
Thank you, Jose, for a great presentation. Can we start with page 17, please? Okay, I can see here utilities is 176,000. Just in our meeting 2 days ago, for the water, because 15% goes deduction in the information that we received and we vote on that, they said 200,000 we are going to save. And this was about, and I brought that one in the meeting. 200,000 we're going to save in the water, and also in the page 5 out of 19, the one that you sent it to us, on the sewer, I can see that we are saving that one 356,000. Just these two together, we should save, I mean, not save, but deduction less must be above 500,000. And I can see here 176,000 less only. I don't know, you want to answer all at the end or whatever you decided?
Let's take them right now, one at a time. So let me specify here, as far as water is concerned, the $200,000 reduction was compared to version 2. We did see exactly a $200,000 reduction from version 2 to version 3. We did include that $200,000 reduction. Net, for version 2, there had been about an $87,000 increase. So altogether, water is reducing by $113,000. Sewer is reducing by $356,000. And that is all offset by trash. Trash is going to be increasing 286,000 because we went to the new provider that's having to take care of all the recycling business. So all those net together is 176,000 that you see there. So the good news is that we see a reduction at all, but yeah, definitely some hard times there.
Yes, I can see, but it's still the adding that you said is not matched with this one, the page that you said it, because the 356, and it doesn't matter version 1 or version 2, we are seeing at the final. Is this supposed to be down more than 176 based on the numbers that we received?
No, again,
You can calculate one later, or but the numbers is not 176. It's more than that. And then let's go to page 25, please. Well, here you're talking about contingency, correct? Contingency you explained as was very, very good that you said it is for something that if it is happened. Please understand, and I'm sure everybody knows, the way that they are budgeting for many months ahead of the time, all of the departments send their budgeting to the Jose, and Jose do a great job and put it together. For example, all of those, they consider kind of extra money for their budget. I received a contract for only 6,000 that we might spend. The contract was 40,000. When I asked, why is that? It's about 500% above for just if something happens. That's the definition of contingency. So my request is, if each department getting for themselves somehow portion of contingency, we are above the threshold $1 million. We don't need it to put extra money there because each department already in the budget consider some contingency fund. And I have example for that. If you want it, I can show it, that one. I want people know. Let's go to the page 5, please. There you go. They said in the top, non-union 5% increase for 53%. This is, remember this non-union in another page, I think it was page 6 or something.
Director Ascari, your time is up. I'm sorry. Your time is up.
Well, how we get answered? Can I raise my hand again?
Yes, you can
Okay,
raise your hand again. Director Torn.
But the response?
Director Torn, you have the floor.
Yes, okay. I'm going to do a little bit differently. I'm going to ask all the questions first, and then hopefully we'll get answers. And if there's any time left, I will ask questions again. Otherwise, we can process a different way. So the first question is, how much is the third mutual increase? And if there's any discrepancy, why? Second question is, any plan to reduce work requests, provide a better quality and a better service, and hence reduce the duplicated effort that we need to waste money on? Third, what is your plan to improve quality and cut waste? What is the VMS plan to reduce, improve quality and reduce waste? Okay. And also on page 10, okay, I don't see the category of saving from last year. Page 10, if you can move to page 10.
Slide 10.
Your presentation, page 10. Okay. What are the savings from last year? Okay, hold on. Okay, page 11, sorry, next page. Okay, where are the savings, money saved for 2019 that vacancies, 2020, 2021, and possibly 2022? This, if we add it all up, that's about 250, over 200 people saved. That's about 1/3 of maybe a little bit less than maybe 30% of the budget we have. So where are the savings that we? I would like to see in our budget plan, okay, a category say how much money we saved last year. Then we can say how much money we need for next year. We all understand that you have need for the next year, but seems like all the money saved disappeared. I don't understand why. Okay. The next question is a lot of people are asking money about the pandemic period that we didn't spend. So the question I have is, I was told they were in the reserve fund. But if you look at a reserve fund, where are the $4 million that we saved? I don't see that. Okay. And again, there's a problem with our budget. There is no money saved, so just disappeared. Okay. And also about property tax fund. We talked about setting up seed money for property tax, so we don't have to borrow money every year, every time.
Thank you, Director Torn. Your time is up.
So
Director Blackwell,
money that
you
we
have the
borrow?
time. Director Blackwell.
Okay, very little, but
Do I have an answer? Sorry, do I have an answer?
You're out of order. You ran out of time.
Can I have an
Go ahead,
answer?
Blackwell.
So nobody answers
Keep
my
it up
question.
and I'll
30
keep
minutes,
it up
30
and I'll
seconds.
mute you. You're going to follow the protocol as I decide.
What is the protocol?
stipulated at
Answer
the beginning.
question.
You're out of order. Director Blackwell has the floor.
Okay, just a couple of very interesting comments. This is the first time I've ever seen this.
I'm sorry, can you use the microphone so they can hear you? My apologies.
Thanks. It's catching. Okay, thanks. On page 21, sorry, yes. On page 21, this is the first time I have ever seen this chart where the red does not start at 2024. And I assume that is partly because we're planning an increase in our fees for the reserve funds this year, and I think that's good. I also am impressed that we are finally going to have the single-story gutter cleaning that we need desperately, as evidenced by resident comments. So those things I see are very good. I know that everyone would love to find a golden egg, but I'm not sure there is a golden egg. So keep looking, but also keep planning in more mundane and ordinary ways like we're trying to do here, bit by bit by bit. And if we should find a golden egg, we'll all be very happy. But let's not demand it, and let's not expect it. Let's just work on it piece by piece. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Blackwell. I apologize to Director Torn. Jose, could you answer some of Director Torn's concerns, please?
All right. Let's talk about the savings. So Director Torn wants to see or wants to find out more on slide 11 here, what's going on with the savings. And each year, what we do is we do slide 11, please. We take a look at the end of the year and figure out what happened in the operating account. Did we have an operating surplus? Did we have an operating deficit? And that is usually recommended to be netted against the contingency fund the following year. So that is one of the things that we looked at when we looked at the contingency fund. We showed the operating surplus that we're projecting, for example, in 2022. That you'll see that increase the contingency fund balances going forward. So that is one of the areas where you can find it. As far as history is concerned, that's where you'll be able to see it. He also wanted to see a decrease from 22 to 23 because we're funding less positions, whereas in 2022 we had 734. In 23 we have 711. Unfortunately, there is an offset to that, being the wage adjustments that we've talked about previously, and additionally, the change in allocations in particular departments where they're charging their time appropriately to United based on where their time is spent. So that's why you don't see a decrease there. But overall, it was a pretty small increase when you're looking at the dollars perspective. If you were to go to employee relations, so slide number 17, for example, if you were to look there, it's a $314,000 increase out of an $11 million budget. That's an increase of just 2.5%. So again, you see the offset there. You can see the decrease that's coming in there based off of what we just described. So that's some of that, what you can see in savings. As far as property tax is concerned, again, we collect an appropriate amount every year compared to what we pay out. The borrowing has to do with timing, which we've repeatedly talked about in our finances, but the property tax fund is appropriately placed. As far as reducing work requests, I'm not familiar with anything like that, but those are some of the answers to his questions.
Thank you, Jose. Now, if it's all right with the directors here, we can start another round, and I'll start with the residents here, and then the residents online, and then we'll go to directors. Is that acceptable to the directors? Okay, is that okay with staff, Jose?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Director Armendariz, you have the floor.
Would you please show page 17 on the screen? Oh, yes, there, okay. The insurance amount there of $4.6 million is really made up of two components. One is property insurance, which is $3.6 million, we'll call it, and the other $1 million is liability and other coverages, non-property. Now, the reason I want to bring this up is that if you go on that business plan by account and go across, you will see that in 2019, our insurance was only $950,000. And at that time, we had one policy that all the mutuals were covered under. That was a Travelers for $700 million. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because I have some questions, plus I believe that we need to inform our members more adequately, because I think a lot of them are underinsured or aren't properly insured. Now, last year, when our premium was estimated just on property of $3.2 million, that was a coverage that was only $250 million versus $700 million in the past. And we were only covering GRF and United jointly. So that was an allocation of that premium. Third went off on their own. This year, I understand that GRF is getting their own coverage separate. So this year, this coverage is strictly for United because Third is also off on their own. So here is my question is, how much coverage is that anticipating? Whatever it is, 250 million, 225 million, it's going to be, well below what a replacement value would be, but probably adequate for, let's say, the realistic exposure to loss. But again, I think we need to put this information together in a form that's understandable by our members out there, because a lot of them don't realize these things. And we should recommend that they all have an H06 policy. I'm sure there's a lot of them out there that just have a renter's policy, because they look at it like they're just occupying the unit on a lease with the mutual. And they should have an H06. And the benefit of H06 is not only will they cover their improvements, if they've had improvements, but also their personal property and things like that. And if there was a disaster and we unfortunately had to issue a special assessment, an H06 policy is the only way you can get that coverage. It's called loss assessment coverage. And you can specify any amount you want in there, whatever you think is the market value of the improvements that you've got in your property. So those are my questions. First, what is the coverage that we're anticipating to have? And, I know there's very little you can do today, and we need to inform our members better and recommend these things to them. Thank you.
Now, Jose, is this out of your lane, or do you want to comment on that?
So we've asked our risk manager, Dan Yost, to respond. So he's either going to come in or log on screen. So we'll address that answer in just a moment.
Okay, thank you. So,
But,
Mr.
but I
Armendariz?
will say thank you to Mr. Armendariz. It's a great opportunity for us to do a public service announcement and do recommend those H06 policies because they're always a good idea to protect not only the mutual property but your own personal property and protect you against any unnecessary risk. So thank you.
Now, Eric, I don't see anybody on Zoom that's a resident.
So I just received a response from Dan Yost. The answer is $225,000 is the
Million.
coverage amount.
25 million?
Thank you. $225 million.
So it's gone down. Okay.
Okay, so I have nobody else on Zoom, so I'll start again with our directors. This time I'll start with Director Ross.
Hey, I'm on the Zoom. I've been on the Zoom all the time.
You're not, I told you, I'm going to call on the directors that are here and then the people on Zoom. What don't you understand about that? Director Ross has the floor.
I was gonna talk about the same issue that was just discussed about insurance. Chart number 17. For those of you who don't know, we have an insurance committee that's been formed and it's meeting to discuss how we can reduce the cost of insurance to our entire community. And we're looking at captive insurance companies, we're looking at self-insurance, we're looking at setting up our own insurance companies, we're looking at a lot of different options. Because I agree what was just said is 4.6 million is unacceptable. That's, and it contains most of it, 3.6 million in property. If we can just cut it in half, that would save everyone about $20 per manor. And so, so we are looking into that right now, and hopefully we'll come up with some good ideas to save us some money, because insurance is an issue that is steadily increasing, but there are things that can be done to control those expenses. So that's my only comments.
Thank you, Director Ross. Was there a question there, or are you happy to, Dan Yost will be coming in to talk to us? Yeah. You're okay? Director Lee, would you want to?
Yeah, where Director Lenny had mentioned. Now, on this 2023 plans for the assessment fee, does that include, is it based on $4.6 million insurance premium? Or is there?
Yes.
Oh, it is, okay. And now, I understand that, aren't we supposed to renew our policy in October?
Yes. in
So
October.
we should find out fairly soon about what would be our insurance premium, right?
Dan Yost will be giving you an update at your next closed session in mid-September, and then the renewal is October 1st.
Yes, well, at this point, of course, finding a lower premium is great. But at this point, like anything else, if we just keep it the same, I would be satisfied, because everything else is going up. And I don't know, finding something that was less expensive for the amount of coverage that we want, I don't even know. Maybe you guys can find it, but I don't know. That would be a really challenging thing. Now, I have a question. Director Azari had mentioned it too, about the contingency funds, that if we continue our contribution, our contingency ending balance is building up every year, right? According to this chart. And so 2022, according to this projected balance, is 1.35 million. And then by 2026, it will add up to 2.6. So if we are using up all these balances, if we have to use it up, it's there. However, is it possible, instead of having this build up every year, we can keep up to so much and then move it to reserve funds? Can that be done? I don't
Yes.
know.
Yes, the contingency fund is one of, again, it's used for the repair or replacement of mutual assets damaged by uninsured or unexpected disasters. Also, in addition to providing for unanticipated significant expenditures. So you can use this for any of those items. You can use this, it's a nice to have fund. It's not one that's required. And what the total ending balance should be or what our goal should be would be something that the board has to direct. And if the board is satisfied with the balances, then they can decrease future years.
Okay, Director Lee. Director Cash Aquicar, you're on.
I'm very dumb, I don't understand this, but chart 11, you are showing an increase in FTE of 10%, and you're still budgeting way more than that at 735.97 versus 711.47. Is our staff, we are that understaffed?
Yes. Yeah, we are. We're having a really tough time. The market is very difficult out there to try to get where we're going. We're experiencing a lot of issues going forward. You see it in the clubhouses. You see it everywhere. We are short-staffed.
So anywhere you can use our residents to take place, part-time or whatever?
We just created a new position called Recreation Leader and Community Center Attendant. This is what allowed us to increase the hours at the community center and the fitness center at the community center. We did that at the end of last month, and then we are continuing to hire in that classification. It's a part-time classification, and many of the vacancies have been filled by residents. And so they are helping us fill those vacancies, and that will allow us to expand our amenity hours even further. There should be another announcement coming soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Cash Aquicar. Director Diane.
I just want to comment on that. That's a great idea because they're part-time and then they fall out of a lot of other expensive things. So anyway, I was just looking over, the reserves and that appliance and fixture. I mean, we have this great benefit that we're offering our residents or our members. We're scheduled to spend in 2023 $3,263,000 in those kind of fixtures, those cooktops, dishwashers, and all that. And that is about the same as 2019. It's like just a 4% increase. But that amount, totals up to about $41-45, a month of expenditures that we, spend on that kind of stuff. So it's just it's a big part of our amenity, our thing that we have. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Director.
If I may comment on that, though, the one silver lining there is that once you do replace those appliances, then they are officially alterations, they belong to the members, and then you no longer have a future responsibility to repair or replace them.
Well, I mean, that's good because what they used to do, I think, is you used to buy appliances from Laguna Woods, and then they would constantly keep that in the inventory as an appliance that the United owned. And now, I think they have to go out and buy their own, do their own remodeling, and then they get reimbursed.
Yes.
And so then they're out of the system.
Correct.
Thank you, Director Casey. Director
Okay.
Blackwell.
Okay, as far as H06 policies, we talk about almost every breeze, at least every other breeze. We talk about it at every new resident orientation. And we do continue to talk about it because they need to know. Our water intrusion events for this year so far have been 600 water intrusion events for United, which is kind of shocking, but not unsuspected. Like I say, the exterior shell is old, even if the interior of the egg is new. So you're putting new stuff into an old one. And residents need to keep being advised because every time we say it, it seems to be news to somebody. So we will keep on saying it. I'm sure the Communications Committee will give more blasts and so on that. Let's see. The clubhouse employees being part-time, there is no lifting, no heavy lifting in the part-time jobs, and that's the good news. And so that's really good for us. I think that's all I have to say, except that I'm interested in seeing whether our insurance, if we join with Third or not, will be beneficial, and that'll be an interesting discussion this year. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you, Director Blackwell. Now I'd like to take advantage of Dan Yost while he's here. And Steve or Jose, could you clue him in where we're at? And I'd like also, Dan, for you to give us a little history to bring us to the here and now and help us understand where we came from, where we're at, and where we're going to go. Thank you.
Yes, in regards to property insurance, where we were at one time, the mutuals and GF were joined in a property insurance policy up to $700 million. Through the last 3 years, property insurance has been very difficult to obtain. Reinsurance markets left. Valuations for communities became key. And over the last 3 to 4 years, the community had to do a reevaluation, which we saw the statement of values double for the community and for United. We had one carrier at one time, Travelers, that submitted insurance or covered insurance for the entire community. That went down to about $50 million, and therefore we had to structure programs to get insurance up to $700 million. Through the process of the insurance and getting capacity, we did studies, and currently for United they have $225 million in insurance, and that insurance was reviewed by the broker. They did a fire analysis, and per that fire analysis, they determined that $225 million was an appropriate amount for United, and that a fire analysis looked at things such as a wildfire that may occur or an earthquake that may occur, and fire that would be that would happen after an earthquake, because that would be covered under your normal property insurance program. So that was the limit of insurance that United currently has and continue to has, and what's in their budget for this year.
Okay.
Further
Now,
questions?
another thing with this insurance, I know the market's going nuts now. Are we able to buy, if we wanted to, the amount of coverage that we need?
So at this point, the last renewal, part of the history of that, at one time there was $700 million, then it went down to $425 million. Currently there's $225 million. That capacity to get to the full statement of values is not available.
Okay, thank you. All right, let me go to Director Torn. Director Torn, you have 3 minutes. You have the floor.
Yes, there's in addition to the 6 questions I asked, I would like to talk about outside service. Outside service, if you look at the chart on page 5 of 19, it's in 2022, it's 1.477, and this in 2023, it's 2.17. So it's a tremendous increase, 700, about 50% increase. Okay, and we have employee compensation increase. We have related expense compensation increase. So the total increase is somewhere around the 9% increase. Okay, that is a very substantial increase. Okay, besides this question, can finance explain to me the 6 questions I've asked earlier? Give me the answer on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Torn. Jose?
All right, so I did provide a lot of those answers, but again, I'll go over the outside services. The outside services went up by $695,000 from the 4 things we talked about. Plumbing, $300,000 moved from reserve to operating. Damage restoration, $191,000 in more moisture intrusion events. More fumigation is going to take place. And again, the gutters,
I'm only interested in outside service because it's labor. That's what I'm only interested in. Okay, so yeah, that's significantly increase. Why is that a significant increase?
For the 4 reasons I just mentioned.
Oh, you mean the fumigation is included in there?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what? How much is the third increase? And it's different. Why? Different from ours. Why?
I don't have the third figures in front of me. I'm sorry.
Okay, you can explain to us later. Any plan to reduce work requests? Work requests something that's totally wasting money if we do it right the first time. So any plan to reduce work requests and provide better quality and cut waste?
Director Torn, we're talking about budget here. How does that question relate to our budget?
I can give one example.
To reduce the expense, reduce the cut the waste, reduce the budget.
I can give you one example that we changed the budget for 2023 to help reduce work ticket orders, and that would be in the area of landscape. In landscape, we decided to get one more coordinator. We ended up trading out a gardening position for a coordinator position, and the purpose of that was that we found that a lot of the ticket requests, if you will, the complaints, the phone calls that we were getting was just a matter of people wanting to find out when the crews were going to come by again the next time to clean up the yards and those kinds of things. So we discovered that with an additional coordinator, we'd be able to get 2 more people and be able to answer those questions more efficiently, again, thereby providing greater service. So that is one example of what we're doing on the budget end to be able to help decrease the workers, the work tickets.
I thought the landscape said that the biggest problems are the ground maintenance and tree maintenance and those things. I didn't know that the biggest problem is, and we are talking about the tickets. We are not talking about just requests. The tickets are the quality issue that you have to do it again. You have to send out people doing the work again. I'm not talking about additional questions. It's just inquiries. Inquiry, that's a communication issue. You need to work on that. I agree with you. Okay. But that's if you just send out people to doing the communication, that's the wrong way to do it. We need to do better communication on that. Okay, and also page 11. If you can go to page 11. Please go to page 11. Okay. 2019, we have 12 vacancies didn't fill. 2020, we have 81. 2021, we have 83. 2022, we're expecting about 69. So total of 235, 36 people.
Sorry,
filled.
Director Torn, your
the
time is up.
population saved.
Your time is up.
Okay, please answer that
Mr.
question.
Rader, you
Please
have the
answer that
floor.
question. Please answer that question.
Your time is up. Mr. Rader, you have
Is
the floor.
3 minutes including answers?
Mr. Rader, you
3
have
minutes
the floor.
including answers or just questions?
Mr. Rader, you have the floor.
Thank you. I just want to make a couple of quick comments. When you're talking about the contingency fund and we say unanticipated expenses, I would add another word, emergency unanticipated expenses. For example, if I'm correct, we and United went over budget by about $240,000 last year. Where did that money come from? It came from, I believe, contingency. That's why you have a contingency fund for emergencies, emergency unanticipated. The other point I would make, Mr. Armendez, sorry, Manuel, says that he believes that BMS could do a better job in looking at actual costs that we're going to expend under the reserve fund. Well, if you look at what was presented at this meeting, initially it was pointed out that we were anticipating $16 million of expenditure, but BMS took a look at it, did exactly what Manny wanted, and brought it down to 13. The last thing that I want to point out, my thought is this. It is not just the board that is involved with the budget. It's also the residents. And what I mean by this is you're having a meeting town hall meeting, and you're going to have a discussion about saving money with water, I would suggest that you add other things to tell the residents how they can participate, such as, I believe I brought up to some of you that my wife found a person who was using the dryer 80 minutes when you could dry your clothes in 40. And she didn't realize that she's paying for the electricity. We also have the issue of the dwelling live, people calling in for people to enter the village. So there's a bunch of things that you may come up with, and maybe just tag on to your meeting, town hall meeting, and point out how residents can help bring down the costs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rader. And Director Africar had his hand up. Director
I have a
Cash.
quick question to Mr. Yost. Do we still have Marsh as one of our insurance agents?
Yes, Marsh is the insurance
Still
broker
insurance
for
agent?
United and GRF. Correct.
Okay. And how much of a percent increase has he shown this year?
Percent
This-
increase in,
21 to 22 or 22 to 23?
as far
Or
as
we-
premiums for a line of insurance, or, so you can break it down into different categories. If you want to look at market outlooks, we're looking at doing the renewal as of 10/1 for the general liability, and the market outlook is anywhere between a 10 and 20% increase in
10 to
general liability.
20%.
And excess liability and property insurance premiums for rate increases have been about in the 10 to 15% range. But also with property insurance, you have a statement of values. You have to increase your statement of values based off of the current inflation. We're able to increase the statement of values a little bit below the inflation. So that's just another factor that contributes to the increase in property insurance. Thank you.
You there? Director Cash. All right, now with the rest of the directors who are here, what do we want to do with this? I'm going to go down another round. Are we satisfied or what? Director Diane Casey.
I have.
Excuse me, we didn't get second round.
Director Diane Casey has the floor.
I just have a question from a member that ran into a problem with trying to charge his car, up at the admin building, that there was a car like hooked up all day and, still there at night. I mean, how is that monitored?
Well, wait a minute now. Are we talking about budget things?
Well, wouldn't
M&C?
that cause, use of electricity that isn't getting paid for? I don't know. Or even able to.
Mr. President, Board
Mr.
members.
Mejia, thank you.
Thank you. Let me address that quickly. We are working on enforcement of how long the cars remain parked at each one of the charging stations. Once a car reaches 100% charge, it no longer draws energy. So it is not drawing energy, but it's taking up space that another car can utilize. We're working on that. So I just want to let you know that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mejia. Director Ascari, did you have something you wanted to say? Do you have a question or anything?
Yes, you asked everyone twice. And because you cut my question last time. Yes. I want to just mention two things very quickly. For page 5, if you're bringing page 5, please. Look, this takes time, and then you cut us. Okay. Again, I wanted to mention that non-union, it gets 5% off, and in another page, they said 1/3 of non-union is above the market. So when you times these two, it's not something one size fits all. I am not agree with this, and including all of the officers is not in this survey. So please consider this one a little bit more mature. If other workers here working for 2% off, this 5% should be considered a little bit less. Or at least not for those people that paying above the market, because they said 1/3 of them paid above the market. Another is in page 21. Was it that okay, this one. One director mentioned It's the first time that she see this one. I suggested you see your email. As a treasurer of United, at least 3 times I sent this one, and I said this page scared me that I cannot sleep every night properly. That's why I am coming with different direction to get money. So please check your email and don't say it is the first time that you see this one. Please go to the page 20, please. Here, if you read this line, they said alternative minimum is 11.8 million, and then the full is 14.1. At this point, we don't need it, even the 14 point. I know we are in the red, and it doesn't make a difference between this one. The minimum is 11.8. That's why you mentioned there, and it's in that level. In the past, we add $10 for a reserve account. We just keep going, and we have to come up with some ideas to make that money make more money. Just putting in the account that goes $1 million down based on the investment that we have is not a good idea. But it's not fair to put more money on the shoulder of residents as well. So I am against of that one, and we can go in the middle one, not 11, not 14, or something like 12 million. It would be for the reserve account, just be there. And the contingency, I said, because all the department make all some contingency. We don't need that $1 for contingency. We are above the threshold. We can take that.
Thank you, Director Ascari. Let Jose answer some of that. You're out of your 3 minutes. I'm sorry. Director Judge.
Okay, $11 down.
Sure. Let's go back to slide number 5. Director Ascari was right. It's not one size fits all when it comes to wage adjustments. We, of course, evaluate all employees and make sure that we reward top performers. What we're including here is a 5% overall merit pool, for lack of a better word, where we take this money and make sure that we reward those that need it, and those that don't, then we don't. As far as slide 21 was concerned, just for clarification, what was said was that this is the first time that director had seen yellow starting in 2024. Previous to this, we had seen red all the way through. So I think the indication was that this has gone out, but the director was happily surprised to see some more yellow on here instead of completely red. And again, that is going to be because we elected to increase the funding, and additionally, we decreased what we projected to expend in 2023. And there was something on slide 20, which was the percent funding here. So I think that addresses the questions.
Thank you, Jose. Now, with the directors here, what do you want me to do here? What do we want to do? We want to go around? Are we done?
I am available. My hand is up.
Well, I'm not talking to you right now. I'm asking the directors that are here. Then I'll come to you.
Good presentation.
Yeah, excellent.
Right. All right, I got something here from, all right, Director Torn.
Yes, if you look at page 11 of your presentation. Okay, so we have all these vacancies. We didn't pay them, I assume. Okay, and now we look at page 5 of 19 of our agenda item. Please look at page 5 of 19 of our agenda item. 5 of page, our agenda item, not your presentation, our agenda item.
She's getting there. 1 second. It'll come up in a minute. Go ahead with your question.
Okay. I'm looking at this page 519. There is no beginning balance. So we are paying the full budget and there's no benefit of savings from previous years. Why is that? Where are the savings? Yeah, some of them went to the reserve. Okay, this is the budget. Then let's go to the reserve and see. There is still no beginning balance. So all the savings disappeared.
So,
And we have to pay them. I don't understand why. What I don't understand is where are all those savings? Everybody's asking the same question.
Sure.
Pandemic, we have so much savings.
Sure, if you allow me to answer, Director Torn. Your savings that you...
Okay.
All right, on the Director Torn, will you let staff answer your question, please? Don't be so ignorant. Go ahead.
So the savings that were, so you have two different things. You have your operating, which last year for 2021, you ended in a deficit. So with regards to the reserve, which is what you're asking about, those were a budget savings. However, once again, you spent, even though there was a savings compared to budget, you spent more than you brought in. And as a result, towards one of the later slides in the presentation, you saw that in the ending balance column, that your reserve account was decreasing in value on an annual basis. So yes, again, the savings, you spent less than you budgeted, but you budgeted to bring in more than you were going to spend, or bring in less than you were going to spend.
So what you're saying is your expense, your budget here already include the savings that we received during the previous year. Is that what you're saying?
So the budget, it's more to do with your actual balances at year end. So your savings from the previous year, meaning you spent less than what you budgeted. So those balances still exist within your reserve balance account.
Let's talk about 2021. We have a lot of savings from 2020. Okay, where are the savings?
Once again, those reside in the balances at the year-end account.
Yes, but not in the budget. So we have the savings in the year-end, in the balance sheet, but they are not in the budget.
all right, we've discussed this a couple of times, but I'll show it to you one last time here. On slide 23 that we looked at, you want to know where those savings are. You can see the ending balance jump up from 2019 to 2020. There are your savings right there. That you can see the balance increase from 17.2 million to 20.2 million, a difference of about $3 million, $2.9 million.
I want to see that in the budget. We should see that in the budget. How much saving are we going to get with this with the savings? You talk about this $3 million savings. Where are the $3 million in here?
You see it there in your actuals, in the balances that we show you, in the balances that we begin with every month, every year.
Where in the page 5 of 19? Where do you see the $3 million?
You see it on slide 23 there in front of you. You can see the ending balance has increased.
We're in the budget. That's what I mean. It disappeared in our budget. $3 million disappeared. So we still have to pay full budget. And the $3 million disappeared in this budget.
To be clear, it did not disappear.
Director Torn, your time is up. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yeah.
Who makes a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Director Lee has made a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Yeah.
Director Casey, we are adjourned. Thank you very much, staff.
Goodbye.